In the beginning, humans wandered the physical world, marveling at the beauty that surrounded them, living peacefully amongst all the creatures that roamed the earth. As time went on, the people grew bored and restless. They began creating games within the game, making up rules and adding elements. At first, the idea of creating was practical, a way to solve the task at hand while making the game easier and more fun. The people loved this idea of creating and began creating more and more things at faster and faster speeds. In time, they became consumed with their creations, losing sight of who they were and why they had come to Earth. While most people were busy creating, spending, and consuming, others became focused on achieving greater and greater power. They began to manipulate the system, stealing, cheating, or changing the rules to advantage themselves. By taking control of the media and the education systems, they saw that they could shape the minds of the people, which allowed them to bend reality to suit their needs. They taught the people new values, such as money equals power, purpose, authority, security, and happiness, and that beauty is created, not found naturally. Believing this, the people began to frantically run around the game, collecting coins so that they could achieve purpose, power, authority, security, and happiness, and that they too could be beautiful and create beautiful things in their lives using their new-found wealth. As the years passed, the people fell into a deep trance, handing over much of their power for others to make decisions on their behalf. Many began creating and consuming things that were harmful to their minds, bodies, and the environment they lived in. They could see the damage and the suffering that their actions were causing, yet the hypnotic programs they were under compelled them to continue. Many people became unhappy, anxious, depressed, and sick. While the adults were running around in a madness, the children were looking at the world they were going to inherit. A great sadness fell over their hearts. They didn't want to engage in the systems that the adults had set up for them. Many parents became concerned about the state of their children. They took them to doctors, psychiatrists, counselors, and specialists in search of answers as to why they didn't fit in. What these parents didn't realize was their children didn't belong to the old world systems. These children had come to be a part of the new, emerging systems. It was the children who first realized that they could sit out of the game. They understood that they did not have to adopt the broken systems that their parents and grandparents had so easily accepted. The children cried out for the adults to wake up and see how destructive the game they were playing was. The governments and businesses who had set up the rules of the game took notice, but their bottom line wasn't impacted by children missing school to protest. The longer the children sat out of the game, the more the adults began to listen. The information age that the world had entered allowed both the children and adults to more easily understand the rules of the game, and they could see how flawed the rules were. Big Brother allowed them to know, or at least suspect, the players who were cheating, lying, stealing, and harming. The people on Earth began to see that the game had been set up in favor of a few, while most were losing by a set of rules that were stacked against them. Those who had managed to acquire great wealth and were pure of heart shattered the once-held belief that money buys happiness. Many people began realizing that the goals that they were setting up for themselves in their lives would never offer them the fulfillment that they were seeking. The the people began to wake up to the fact that the rules of the game were skewed, detrimental, and potentially going to kill them all. They began refusing to play the game until the rules were changed. They had grown tired of running around collecting money to buy things. They longed for peace and calm to return to their lives. When enough people stopped playing, those who were manipulating the rules began to take notice and asked why no one wanted to play anymore. The people who were sitting out explained to them that they would rather not play than to play by the unfair rules. They were sick of playing with people who were willing to lie, cheat, steal, or harm. The people in power needed others to participate in order to keep the game going and to keep the systems of control and money in place. The more people that dropped out of the game, the less control they had. The people who had tied their identities to money, possessions, and the rules of the old game weren't on board with those who were waking up, wanting them to sit out. They feared losing all they had. The awakened people would patiently explain that the survival of humanity and many other species depended on the rules being changed. That without the rules being changed, dark days lie ahead for everyone. Some of these people agreed, while others dug in their heels, refusing to budge. Some feared that they wouldn't know what to do with themselves without the constant striving for things. They wouldn't know how to measure their worth without everything that they owned. The people who had woken up assured them that all would be well in the new earth, that they would find even greater happiness without their attachments. The trouble was they could not believe in things they could not see. Those who continued to play by the old rules suffered greatly as the systems they had come to know collapsed around them. They clung tightly to the systems they were familiar with, trying to patch them back together and get them working again. They tried to convince others to keep playing, but it was to no avail. Some of these people died, having never discovered who they really were, while others grew old, bitter, and angry at the people who had changed the rules. The people who had been lying, cheating, stealing, and harming grew very angry that the awakened people wanted to change the rules. They liked the rules just as they were, heavily skewed in their favor. The people who played dirty got desperate and began creating scenarios to cause fear in those who were still awakening. They tried to convince them that war was necessary and created reasons as to why they needed to play. They controlled the mainstream media and used it to spread lies and fear, confusing some while strengthening the determination of others to change the rules. The awakened people had moved on from the old games. Those who had played dirty and had identified themselves closely with possessions struggled to hold on to the old systems. The awakened people had taken the opportunity to do nothing, to spend time getting to know the people around them and to build stronger relationships and connections, which proved beneficial during the transition to the new earth. It was in this nothingness that a sense of peace and calm came into their lives, allowing for a rebirth of new ideas and new ways of living. It was in this space that they were given the opportunity to explore their true passions. Many of them found their deepest desires had been there all along, waiting to be retrieved. It was during the time when the people did nothing that everything began to change.